Okay, another common thing that I see guys not take advantage of more often than not is chumming. Sure, it may be illegal in lots of freshwater places to chum, but in lots of other places it's totally legal. Now, let's say if it's illegal in your area, what can you do to kind of utilize the same effect? Generally, you're fishing with a friend or you have a dual rod stamp. You're generally fishing with more than one rod at a time. Now, something I learned a while back from a guy named Matt Hayes, which is a professional carp fisherman, is maintaining that same area where the scent of your bait is placed. Now, what I mean by that, let's say you have one rod cast out there and it's held in that spot, and you have another rod that you cast out. You hold that perspective that that bait's there, this bait's here. But you got a bite here and you got a bite here. Instead of you and your buddy reeling up at the same time to replace your bait, keep one rod in, bring this rod in, that scent still could be out there, plus you know where he casted, and you know from there that you are right about in the same other area. So you replace your bait, you cast back out to your same area, now he knows, like, hey, I'm right here, he's right there. He has something to judge it with. Now he replaces his bait, cast to the same area. Not only does that keep the exact same scent in those same spots that you've been attracting fish to the whole time, but it also gives you a good shot knowing that this is where I got bit before and that's where I got bit before. Versus if you both bring them in at the same time, you could throw yard short, you could throw yardage over, you could miss too far right or too far left. So that's one thing to keep in mind right there that definitely can help. Sure, it might make the difference of one bite in an 8-hour span, but guess what? That bite could be the monster that you've never caught before. So you got to think about that. Another thing, I'm not into wasting my own time. So my knots, I'm not going to jerry rig some phony knot on there, or when I go to tie my knot, if it doesn't look entirely right, I'm going to use my clippers that I always bring to cut that knot off. Make sure I lubricate a good Palomar knot on there, because why blow it if I'm waiting on a killer fish? Why blow it? Okay? Not worth it. Now, another thing that lots of guys don't realize, but I've actually seen it take place, when you are netting a fish, I see guys try to come up from the tail end of a fish, and if you got a big guy, guess what? He's strong. The tail end of the fish gets in here, he could push off of the net and leap back out. Not only are you wasting time, but you're also giving the fish a chance to shake the hook. You always want to net a fish head first. Let's say your buddy's got his rod swinging right over your head and you're under there trying to get the fish. You see the weight flying around? Grab the weight. This will save you too. Grab the weight in your hand, and now you know where the line's running the whole time. So you can't see the fish down there, you got a line perspective right in front of your face. You go head first on that fish. I like to trigger the back of the net as I'm diving around. Say I miss, I can pull it back out real fast. The net's not twisted up. I know where it's at. I go back down head first, get under him. His head doesn't have the power to throw himself out of the net. His tail does. So remember, head first. Now, another thing that I like to do, and I know a lot of other fishermen like to do themselves, is say instead of carrying a tape measure with you to measure that fish out to know if you got a keeper or not, what I like to do is I know the common fish that I'm targeting that day, I mark it on my net. For example, I have 18 inches written right here to the base of my handle, and that's a keeper striper of my neighborhood. So as soon as I pull them out of the net, I can measure them up, say, hey, that's a keeper or not. Am I taking them? Or if I'm not taking them, bam, I can get them back out in the water safely in time to, give that fish a better odd of survival. And another thing that you might want to keep in mind, when your hands are dry, you're actually affecting the slime coat on that fish, which does slightly decrease the odds of his survival. If you want to maintain a good fishery in your area, to keep it good in the future for your kids and their kids after, you want to make sure you do the best job you possibly can. Whether that means not taking a fish that day and going to eat a farm fish a raised farm fish in a restaurant later that night, let it be, but make sure that you get that fish out safely. If you're going to keep them, take them out, knock them out. But it's just a nice little tip right here to measure them up real quick. I'm your host, Nick the Informative Fisherman, and we'll see you next time.
Oh, look at there.
Oh, man. Right through the anus.
Careful now, we're going to have to change this over to an R-rated video.
That's why I went with anus.
Okay.